Hello everyone, thank you for tuning in to today's workshop. Today's topic is on imposter syndrome. My name is Samantha Bautista, pronouns she, her, hers, and I'm an academic coach at Fresno State. I'm currently in the Student Affairs and College Counseling graduate program. I graduated with my bachelor's degree in spring 2021 with sociology and a minor in criminology and academic certificates in victim services and cross-cultural competency. Now, I'm not sharing these things to boast in any type of way, but I'm sharing these things because with these accomplishments and achievements, I still experience these feelings of imposter syndrome. And so for today, we're going to be learning a little bit more about what imposter syndrome is. For our learning objectives, I hope that through today's presentation, you're able to understand what imposter syndrome is. You're able to learn which subtypes that you are able to associate with and bring awareness to imposter syndrome. Ultimately, our takeaway from today is not to have some type of cure to overcome imposter syndrome, but is to just ultimately understand what imposter syndrome is and how to use these strategies and tips to overcome those feelings. So about imposter syndrome. So imposter syndrome can be defined as a collection of feelings of inadequacy that persist despite evident success or achievements. So basically, it's the feelings of feeling that you're not enough, feeling that you don't belong, feeling like you're not smart enough, and these type of feelings persist or continue despite those evident success or achievements. And so imposters often suffer from self-doubt and a sense of intellectual fraudulence that override any feelings of success or external proof of their competencies. Okay, so here are some examples of statements that people experience imposter syndrome with and some of the things that they tell themselves internally. And so we're going to take some of these examples. For example, the first one, I don't belong at this university. People with imposter syndrome often tell themselves these statements. Also, they are going to find out I'm not as smart as them. Or I'm at Fresno State because I got lucky and I got this award by luck. Are these some of the statements that you've told yourself before or something similar? If so, we're going to take these statements and we're going to just cancel them out so that we don't continue to use these statements to affect ourselves internally. And so instead of saying, I don't belong at this university, we're going to say, I belong at this university. So we're going to cancel don't, and then you want to make sure that you say, I belong at this university. Also for the second one, they're going to find out I'm not as smart as them. So instead of this statement, you can say, they're going to find out how smart I am. So we're going to cancel out not. And they're going to find out how smart I am. Okay. And for our third statement, I'm at Fresno State because I got lucky, we can say, I'm at Fresno State because they're lucky to have me. Okay, so okay, so that's for our third one. And then for the fourth one, I got this award by luck. You can say, I got this award by hard work and dedication, but we will use hard work in this example. Okay, so these are some examples, once again, of people that experience imposter syndrome. They often tell themselves these things, but this is a way that you can counteract those statements and use them in a way to just encourage yourself as well. Okay, so for this next aspect of our presentation. So one researcher, Clance, developed this assessment to kind of understand which level of imposter syndrome people experience. And so we have this link down below in the presentation, and it's also here, the Clance Imposter Phenomenon Scale. And so after taking this assessment, there are about 20 questions or statements that you're able to use a Likert scale of from 1 to 5 and rate how likely you are to experience these things, or also use these statements. And so after taking that assessment, you're able to add all of the numbers up and determine which level of imposter you experience. And so I hope you can pause this video and take the assessment so that you're able to determine which level of imposter syndrome you experience. So after taking the assessment, you're able to add up all the numbers once again, and then you're able to determine which box that you would land under. So for few imposter syndrome experiences, it would be 40 or less. For moderate imposter experiences, it would be 41 or 60 through 60. And then for frequent imposter experiences, it'll be 61 to 80. And then for intense imposter experiences, it would be 80 or more. And so after taking this assessment, I hope that you can take these different levels of imposter syndrome just to be aware of the amount of imposter syndrome you experience, but not to allow it to define you. I'm not an intense imposter, but just being aware of that as well. Okay, so another researcher, Dr. Valerie Young, developed the different subtypes of imposter syndrome in relation to the Clance assessment scores. And so Dr. Young took each of these subtypes and was able to determine some of those experiences and correlate them on how people may be experiencing or feeling as an imposter. And so these are the different 5 subtypes. First is Perfectionist. The next one is Natural Genius. The third one is Superstudent, and then Expert and Soloist. And then we will also be diving into each of these subtypes and explaining a little bit more about what they are. So for the perfectionist. So perfectionists, some of the characteristics that perfectionists experience, they perceive competence as 100% perfection. Anything short of this considers failure. And this individual always focuses on how something could have been done better. And so you may be heard of the terms like perfectionism, perfectionist, someone that just feels like that they are challenged with the different obstacles or things that come their way. And so if they don't meet those expectations, then they experience those feelings of self-doubt, feeling like they're not smart enough or not good enough. And oftentimes perfectionists are also known as controlling, or not in a negative way, but feeling like they could do their things, or they prefer to do their things their own way or a specific type of way. They're accused of being a micromanager as well, or have difficulty delegating different responsibilities if they are in a leadership role, because they prefer things to be done their way. And then also a perfectionist oftentimes believe that their success is due to luck. So next we have the natural genius. So the natural genius, the characteristics that they have, they measure competence by how easily the achievement came to them. They also, based on hard work and perseverance, they consider those as negative traits because this individual feels that success should have come more naturally to them. So if they were not born with the type of skills or different types of talent, then they feel that they are incompetent when being compared to others. They feel like they're not as smart as them because it didn't come as quickly or as easily as it did for others. And so also for a natural genius, they feel like they should be able to master something right away. For example, if you're learning a new instrument, they feel like if they don't get it on the first, second, or third try right away, then they feel that they are at a level of incompetence in that specific area, and they oftentimes also judge themselves based on their competencies as well. So next we have the superstudent. Dr. Valerie Young also refers to them as a superman or superwoman, but in this case we'll refer to them as a superstudent. And some of the characteristics that they have: they perceive competence as the ability to judge numerous roles and responsibilities simultaneously, falling even slightly short in one role, such as being a parent, caregiver, researcher, constitutes overall failure, even in the context of major successes. And so essentially, a super student often pushes themselves to work harder. They compare themselves to others when doing any type of tasks or assignments or group work, things like that. It's hard for them to say no to certain things. So when asked, they always take on that extra task or responsibility. So with this being said, in this case, it results into sacrificing their own downtime. Also, in addition to a super student, they don't feel like they've earned enough, or they don't know enough in any role that they're in. They're often workaholics as well, and they can't take in any type of constructive criticism because they feel that the person is just giving them any type of negative feedback. And so this super student, you can picture them being in a group project. They're the type of person that wants it, or they want to take on all of the roles and tasks, and they feel like they're capable of taking on all of those roles and tasks. And as mentioned, they sacrifice their own downtime and things like that. And so that's a little bit about who a super student is. And then as for the expert, some of the characteristics that they have: they measure competence based on the volume of knowledge or skill that they have. This individual often fears being exposed as inexperienced because of the lack of knowledge. So they're afraid that everyone's going to find out that they're not as smart as others. They're afraid of being exposed as not being as smart or as knowledgeable. And so this is an example of an expert. And in addition to an expert, their competence is based on what they know and how much they know. It's also their fear of being exposed, as mentioned, to other classmates or teachers, things like that. They believe that they're never going to be able to amount to as much as they want or amount to enough. They feel as they don't know enough. They need to meet some type of requirement or expectations that others hold on them, and they refuse to apply for jobs or new opportunities because they feel like they don't meet the minimum requirement. And then lastly, as for our soloist, some of the characteristics that a soloist can be perceived as: they perceive competence only if an achievement was obtained completely on their own without the aid of additional resources. Asking for help is considered as a sign of failure. And so they avoid asking for help. They picture it being some type of weakness or, as mentioned, a failure. And so a soloist likes to do everything on their own. And they want to make sure that the achievements that they've made was all on their own. And so once again, they're scared to ask for help. They feel like they need to accomplish everything or all the goals that they have made for themselves, and if not, they feel like they've failed in that area. And also, as mentioned, considered help as a weakness. Okay, so as mentioned through this presentation, we're hoping that you can bring awareness to any of the type of implications that imposter syndrome can have on a specific person or yourself. And so being aware that a strong association with general psychological distress and anxiety and depression is often known that those who experience imposter syndrome experience also these different type of mental health issues as well. They often experience burnout, which is emotional exhaustion, depersonalization, and reduced personal accomplishment. So by taking on so much work and so many different types of tasks, they can experience burnout as a result or at the end of that task's work or accomplishment. Also, they experience physical exhaustion and feel overworked. And in addition to this, avoidance of tasks with high visibility, and they often experience a type of fixed mindset over a growth mindset, and dismissal of positive feedback. So if someone were to give them positive feedback on an assignment that they did or something that they accomplished, they dismiss it by saying they could have done better, or they wish that it could have resulted differently. And so these are some of the things that to be aware of the implications of imposter syndrome. And then lastly, some tips on overcoming imposter syndrome that I'd like to share with you through this presentation is to recognize, acknowledge, and share feelings of imposter syndrome with trusted colleagues. Also, to realize that you're not alone. Ask for mentors and trusted colleagues for objective and truthful feedback. And also to reference your personal career success inventory. And in addition to this, practice self-compassion, maintain that growth mindset, and practice thought stopping. So whenever any type of negative thoughts come into your minds, to just stop and try to reevaluate it and change it so that it doesn't override you or overpower the type of person that you are. And then also to seek out an academic coach or counselor at Fresno State, or someone that you're able to depend on or trust as well, to open up about these feelings of imposter syndrome. And so from today's presentation, once again, there is no cure to ultimately overcome these feelings of imposter syndrome, but it's mainly to be aware of it and to recognize those feelings so that you can work towards improving them and ultimately try not to allow it to overpower you. And so thank you for today's presentation. I hope you had a chance to take the assessment to determine which level of imposter syndrome experiences or feelings you may be facing. And just as a reminder that as academic coaches, we're always here to support you whenever you'd like to meet and be open to these feelings of imposter syndrome. And then lastly, here are the references of the research that was used for imposter syndrome in the presentation today.